Shalom Aleichem, Rabbi Kovacs here for Shabbat Vayera. We begin chapter 3 of Bava Batra, Hezkot Habatim, the Hazaka, the assumed ownership for houses. Now what we're talking about here, the Kahati brings in the introduction, is we're not dealing with squatters who are just going on someone else's property and being there for a while and then saying, hey, it's mine. We're dealing with people who have a claim that they belong there. For instance, they're claiming, I bought this property 3 years ago. And then we're going to see if they use this property for a certain amount of time and the previous occupant, the previous owner, doesn't say anything, then even if they lost their paperwork, their deed, we do assume it's theirs based on the fact that they're coming with a valid claim to have purchased it 3 years ago, and they've been using it without any previous occupants protesting or saying otherwise. Now, this Chezkat Batim is not the same as the English common law doctrine of adverse possession. That adverse possession actually allows a squatter to go and develop land, someone else's land, and if that someone else doesn't protest or say anything, then after a certain period of time, I think it's 20 years in Maryland, it's quite a long time, then the squatter actually can file to gain title to the land, even though he never really bought it, but he has been using it for 20 years. This Chezkat Batim is not the same. Does not allow squatters to take someone else's land. This is basically the assumption that people aren't always so careful with their deed after 3 years. He had a good reason for being there. No one said otherwise. The chazaka is, since he's been using it for a while, it's really his. Anyway, back in the Mishnah, Chezkat Batim v'borot. So the chazaka for houses, for water cisterns, hashichin, water trenches, ma'arot, water cisterns, hashovachot, dovecotes, hamerchatzot, bathhouses, Beit Habadin, press facilities, Beit HaSholchin, irrigated fields, Avodim, and servants, Kol Shehu, and anything that is Osei Peru Tadir, that is always usable, it's always giving you some sort of use or profit or produce, Chezkoton Shalosh Shanim Biyom Liyom. The Chazaka is 3 years from one day to the next, meaning the same calendar date. So the case here would be Reuven bought one of these properties from Shimon. And Reuven's been there for 3 years. And then right after 3 years in a day, Shimon shows up and says, hey, what are you doing in my property? And Reuven says, I bought it from you 3 years and a day ago. And Shimon can say, oh yeah, show me the deed. Reuven can say, well, I don't have it handy. It seems to have been misplaced. And we would believe Reuven, because people aren't always so careful. After 3 years, we would not give the land back to Shimon. Now, the Mishnah adds Sodei HaBol. Now, Sodei HaBol is a field that needs to be, gets enough rain that it doesn't need to be irrigated by hand, like a Beit HaShlochin. So, Chezkata, the Chazaka of this field, is Shalosh Shanim ve'ena miyom liyom. It's 3 years, but not exactly from the same calendar date, because this kind of field isn't used all the time. It's really used and cultivated when it rains, not during the non-rainy season. Rabbi Shmuel elaborates. He says, Shlosha Chodoshim Brishona, 3 months in the first year, Shlosha B'achrona, 3 months in the last year, the third year, Ushneim Asar Chodesh Be'emsa, and 12 months in the middle, that whole middle year. Harei Shemona Asar Chodesh could be 18 months, and that would be enough for this type of field. And the Gemara explains it could be they're planting one crop during 3 months of the rainy season in that first year, then they're using it throughout the second year when it's raining, and then another crop at the beginning of the third year, and you have 3 different crops, and that would be enough. Like 3 seasons of cultivating this field would be enough for a chazaka in a Beit Habal, in a rain-irrigated field. Rabbi Akiva Omer, he disagrees, he says, Chodesh Prishona, even 1 month at the end of the first year, Chodesh Ve'achrona, 1 month at the beginning of the third year, Ushnemazar Chodesh Be'emsa, and the full 12 months of the middle year, Harei Arba Asar Chodesh, 14 months sometimes could be enough to make a chazaka. And the Gemara, he says, really, in 30 days, you could grow a little bit of hay for your animals, it's crops that don't need to be grown all the way. So that would be a crop you harvest in the first year and in the third year, and that would be enough. Rabbi Yishmael, now Rabbi Yishmael is adding to what he said before. He says, he says, when did I say my words that it really needs 18 months? Bestei lovon, in a white field, meaning a field of grain that requires rain, and it's, you cut down all the crops, all the grains, at one time when they're fully grown. Vobeste Elon, if we're dealing with a field of trees, like an orchard with different kinds of fruits. So then Konos et Tvoto, Mosok et Zetav, Konos et Kitso. So if then he gathered his grapes, the Tosfos Yantiv explains that sometimes this word Tvua can mean grapes. It usually means grains. Mosok et Zetav, he does Masika to gather his olives. Konos et Kitso, and he brings in the figs. Hare elu shalosh shonim. This counts like 3 years. Now, he could do all of this in 1 year. He could gather, basically, he's gathering 3 crops from the property in 1 year, but since they're 3 separate crops that ripen at 3 separate times, so it's as if he's been there for 3 seasons. He's gathered 3 crops off this field. That's enough to establish a chazaka. Now, Mishnah Bet is going to elaborate on sort of the requirement that the someone who might potentially claim ownership of the land will know about it and be able to protest. Shalosh aratzot lechazaka. There are 3 different lands in terms of chazaka. Yehuda, Ever, Yarden, V'Golil. Judea, across the Jordan River, that used to be all Jewish land. Also, Golil and the northern kingdom. Haya Yehuda, if somebody is in Yehuda, v'hechzik begolil, and someone else is doing a chazaka on his property up in the Golil. Or Begalil, the owner, the presumed owner, is up in the Golil, Chekzi Yehuda, and someone else is occupying, using his property down in Yehuda, Ein a chazaka. It's not a valid chazaka. He can't claim ownership after 3 years because the previous owner wasn't there in the same province, in the same, political, geographical area to be able to notice and lodge a protest. So the Mishnah is concluding, Eina chazaka ad shehei imo b'medina. It's not a valid chazaka until the prior owner, who might complain and say, hey, I never sold it to you, is actually there in the same province to be able to lodge a complaint. Amar Rabbi Yehuda disagrees. He says, Lo amru shalosh shalim ela. He says, our sages didn't teach that 3 years is enough to establish a chazaka. That even the owner could be way over in a spamya in Spain, the yachazik shana, and somebody occupies his field in Eretz Yisrael, in Yehuda or Galil, for a whole year. V'yelchu, and people who are traveling to Spain are going to go there, which could take a year. V'yodyehu shana, and they can go inform him, which might take a year. V'yavo l'shana cheret, and during the 3rd year, the real owner is able to travel back from Spain or send objections to the guy who's on his property. So Rabbi Yehuda holds clearly that even if the previous owner who might lodge a complaint is nowhere nearby, 3 years is enough time that he will find out if there is a chazaka, in this case really an adverse possession, going on, and lodge a protest to prevent it. Yashar koach, good Shabbos, tizku l'mitzvot.